Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto was assigned to Might Guy and Team 3. Might Guy trades Neji and Tenten to take Naruto and Hinata on his team. Can he take this group of misfits and turn them into a team of geniuses? Or will he be forced to give up wearing spandex forever? Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. This part will cover chapters 7 and 8. Let's start. Chapter 7, The Land of Waves. The Hokage sat waiting on his chair. 7 o'clock was the time when he officially started handing out missions, unless, of course, the mission was urgent enough to be dealt with immediately upon request. Not many shinobi teens showed up at 7 in the morning though to receive missions. It was mostly older jonins who suffered from the trauma of past experiences and found it hard to sleep. Only one genin teen would possibly be here so early in the morning. Sarutobi smiled as that teen barged into his office. He pushed a paper under his hand forward. He had just a mission for this exuberant team. Good morning, Hokage-sama. This is Team Guy reporting for duty. My team and I wait with youthful anticipation for our first C-rank mission together. Guy strolled proudly into the office with his students right behind him. Naruto did his absolute best to restrain himself. 2 weeks ago, and he would have been all over the place wanting to know about the mission. Hinata meanwhile smiled nervously at the boy's antics. While she was glad to finally be going on a real mission, she couldn't help but feel anxious at the same time. Lee appeared completely calm. C-rank missions to him were more of a chore than anything. Instead of being out in the field, he would rather be inside the village training. Yes, Guy, I had been expecting you and your team. It is with great pride that I give your team this mission. Instead of explaining it to you though, I'll have the client brought in. Sarutobi cleared his throat and called in a louder voice. Send him in. A couple seconds passed and nothing happened. The whole room stared curiously at the door, waiting for something. Without warning, it flew open and an old man with a bottle of booze stumbled into the room. Damn it! Who leaves for a mission at this early an hour in the day? The man cursed before taking a swig of his jug. I have to drink simply to keep myself awake. Now who is the team assigned to help me? I don't see any super ninja in here. The man looked around the room, scanning completely over Guy and his team. What the hell, we have to protect this drunk old man. The Hokage chuckled. The old Naruto still managed to show his way through after all. Who are you calling drunk? I'll have you know, I am the man responsible for building the greatest bridge ever. The Land of the Waves is about to become well known thanks to myself. The name's Tazuna, remember it? Tazuna took another swig before continuing. And what do you mean protect? A shrimp like you couldn't protect a turd. Why you, I'll kick your ass. Lee was holding Naruto in a full Nelson before he had even started speaking. Naruto could do nothing but swing his arms randomly. Naruto, enough. Guy finally spoke. Naruto immediately stopped swinging his arms but was clearly still fuming. We are all shinobi, sir, and I assure you, we will protect you until your bridge is completed. If you have any qualms about my charges being a little young, fear not. I am a jonin. Nothing will touch you with me around. A jonin, eh? Not bad, I never would have guessed, looking at you though. You and your little clone over there look more suited to the circus. Tazuna laughed aloud to himself. No one else joined in. Students, meet at the south entrance in 15 minutes. I will escort Tazuna-san there myself as we discuss the mission specifics. Guy stepped forward and put his arm over Tazuna's shoulder. Yes, Guy-sensei. His students responded. They filed out the door, but not before Naruto managed to give Tazuna one more dirty look. Well, shall we go? Guy smiled brightly as he and his clients stumbled towards the door. Yeah. I hope you guys know what you're doing. Tazuna was clearly uncomfortable from Guy's close proximity. The Hokage was again alone in his office. His big smile had gone unnoticed by all the room's previous occupants. He just knew they'd get along fine. There are my favorite customers, Tochi said happily as Team Guy hurried into the noodle stand. So how did it go, Did you guys get your first C-rank mission? We sure did, Naruto said bitterly, confusing the older man. Isn't that a good thing? He looked to Naruto's teammates for an answer. Naruto-kun didn't get off to a good start with our client, Hinata answered quietly. Does Naruto get off to a good start with anyone? I asked as she came out from the back room. I am San. Lee shouted in joy at seeing the older women. A quickly glare from her shut him up quickly. I told you, Lee, you can drop the San. Just my name is fine. She decided not to scold him for his loud voice. It would take a long time to break him of that habit. Oh yes, of course, Lee said happily, a deep blush on his face. So when do you guys leave? Tucci cut the two of them off before they could say anything more. 15 minutes. Naruto took a seat at the stand. I need at least one bowl before we leave. We might be gone for a few weeks. A few weeks? I asked in surprise. Yeah, we're helping some old man finish a bridge. Naruto grumbled. Some C-rank mission. So you guys won't be fighting anyone? The older girl sounded slightly relieved. Well, we are bodyguards, but the chances of us fighting anything stronger than bandits is slim to none. Lee answered easily, earning a concerned gaze from Ayam. They are shinobi, after all. Tucci threw down a bowl of ramen which Naruto began to inhale immediately. I'm sure you'll all come back safe. Of course. Lee nodded exaggeratedly. Well, you guys be careful. Ayam looked at all three of them now. Hey, no worries, Naruto said as he finished drinking down the broth. We've been training like mad. I bet Hinata could defeat everyone no problem. But you better save some for me, okay? Naruto turned to his female teammate. Hinata's face turned slightly pink, but she smiled him. I'm sure there will be more than enough for you. Naruto nodded. There better be. Just thinking about it makes dealing with that old fart seem worth it. Alright, well you guys better go. You don't want to keep your client waiting. Tucci chided the group lightly. Right, come on guys. Naruto set off with newfound fire. Hinata giggled slightly and followed after him. Hey Lee. Before the spandex-clad boy could go, Ayam called out to him. He turned back to her questioningly. When you get back, we should go on another date. No horror movies though. Lee's face lit up in a huge smile. Yes. I shall be sure that we finish this mission in a most youthful fashion so that I may return to you in due time. Yeah? She was used to dealing with his weird speech by now. You better hurry or they'll leave you behind. Right. Lee saluted the two before turning and running after his team. Ayam watched them go down the road before she noticed her father was staring at her, a strange smile on his face. What are you looking at? Oh, nothing, Tucci said as he went back to preparing noodles. Damn it, what is taking them so long? Naruto stomped his foot impatiently. He and his teammates stood just before the gates that led out of Konoha. Its massive doors hung wide open, waiting for someone to cross them. The temptation for Naruto was almost too great. He really wanted to get out there and get the mission underway. Crappy client or not, it was finally a C-rank mission. They'll be here soon, Naruto, Lee responded. He was leaning against the wall next to the gate. It has only been 20 minutes. Guy-sensei is with a civilian, so naturally it'll take a little longer. I'm sure they'll be here any second now. Hinata reassured her blonde teammate. She stood right next to him, twiddling her thumbs nervously. Yeah? I know, I'm just so excited to get out of this village. I've never left it before. It must be great out there. Naruto turned around and gestured to the world lying just outside the gates. It's not so much different from here. Not that I've been out far myself. Lee looked up and thought. What about you, Hinata? Have you been out of the village? Naruto turned to look at her. A couple times. But I was much younger and did not get to see much. It was always for family business. Naruto blanched at the mention of Hinata's family. He didn't know any of them, but he knew he didn't like them. A few brief conversations with Hinata made sure of that. Students, we have arrived. All three of them immediately stood at attention as Guy and Tazuna, whose bottle of booze was noticeably absent, strolled into the vicinity. Jeesh, you think a shinobi would have the common sense to keep quiet at this time in the morning? Tazuna looked around at the other few random citizens who were up and about. Not a single one of them paid any mind to Guy and his antics. What a crazy village. What was that, old man? Naruto stepped towards the bridge builder. Tazuna was about to retort, but Guy beat him to it. No threatening the client, Naruto. He is a good man trying to connect his country to the rest of the world. He reminds me a little of you, actually. Don't compare me to him. Both shouted and pointed at each other at the same time. Hinata chuckled while Lee broke out into a broad grin. Damn it, let's just go. Naruto started for the exit of the village. Yeah, the sooner this is over the better. Tazuna also began walking. The rest of the team followed suit. Immediately upon stepping out of the village, Naruto charged forward 10 yards before turning around. Finally! I'm out of that village! Naruto jumped around excitedly. I really am doomed. Why would I have to be stuck with little kids? Tazuna knew he should have put in for B rank. You better watch it. This little kid is going to become Hokage someday. Naruto pointed to himself. Hokage? Tazuna laughed. Kid, I don't know if you've heard, but the Hokage is the strongest shinobi in your village. A brat like you has no chance in hell. I'll definitely become Hokage, just you watch. And when I do, everyone will have to stop disrespecting me and acknowledge my existence as a person. As a great shinobi. Naruto folded his arms proudly. I wouldn't acknowledge you even if you did become Hokage. It'll take more than that to sway my mind. Tazuna walked right past Naruto. The blond boy ground his teeth hard. He wanted to scream at the old geezer. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked up to see Lee standing there with him. Hey, don't worry about him, Naruto. He doesn't really know you. If anything, just remember that your teammates accept you. Lee gave him the nice guy pose. Naruto took a few deep breaths before visibly relaxing. You're right. Thanks, bushy brow. Naruto returned the pose. Now let's get going. Naruto started strolling after Tazuna. Nothing was going to ruin this mission for him. Lee smiled and walked in pace with Naruto. The team strolled leisurely for a few hours, making their way down the path that would eventually take them to the Wave Country. Naruto got bored quickly as he realized the only thing that seemed to exist outside of the village were trees. Nothing too special. Not a whole lot was happening either, and the three genin settled for making light conversation. Guy was not as easygoing as his students though. Something was off about this to him. Guy just couldn't put his finger on it. So he decided to be wary and keep his eye on the bridge builder. Of course, he kept his youthful exposure shown at all times. He had a reputation to keep. He just made sure to observe while he did this. Soon Guy saw it. A puddle. His students walked by it carelessly. After all, what harm was a puddle? The problem was it hadn't rained in days. It shouldn't have been there. Guy made a quick decision. There was something he had to confirm. He just hoped he was wrong. He too walked past the puddle without giving it a second glance. Guy cleared his throat, and once he was sure he had everyone's attention, he spoke. I'm going to go on ahead for a few minutes and inspect the road ahead. Naruto gave their sensei a perplexed look. Why? Is something the matter? Tazuna quickly made his voice heard. Yeah, don't just leave me with these kids. What if something happens? Fear not, I won't be long. There is just something I need to confirm. Before anyone could say anything else, Guy vanished. Everyone stared blankly at the spot he had just been in for a moment. Let's just continue walking. I am sure Guy-sensei will inform us upon his return. It is nothing to worry about. Lee made a small hand motion for everyone to continue. I agree. Hinata said, worry evident in her voice. Yeah, whatever. Naruto smiled happily to himself before he started walking forward. Hinata quickly fell into step with him. Hey, don't leave me. Tazuna quickly ran up to the two of them. Lee smiled before he too started to walk. He didn't get any further than 2 steps when the sound of footsteps and chains reached his ears. Without any warning, he was suddenly quickly surrounded by spiked chains. What the? Lee turned his eyes slightly left and then right. To either side of him were identical-looking men with gas masks and giant claws. They appeared to be linked together by the chains. "Let's finish this while the Jonin is gone," the one shouted, and they simultaneously pulled back their arms, causing the chains around Lee to constrict. Bushy brow. Lee-senpai. Naruto and Hinata turned around just in time to see the two shinobi make this action. To their utter horror, it looked like Lee was about to be sliced into pieces. Fortunately, and to their relief, Lee seemed to disappear just a second before the chains got to him. "What the hell?" one of the shinobi asked in surprise before a foot buried itself into the side of his face, shattering his mask. "Naruto!" Lee shouted as he jumped backwards to avoid the other shinobi's claw. "I need you to protect Tazuna-san." "Hinata! Back me up!" "Right." Naruto obeyed Lee without question. Next to Gai-sensei, he had the most experience in the field after all. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 clones popped into existence, and they all formed a circle around Tazuna. Meanwhile, Hinata took a nervous step forward. Her breathing quickly became irregular as she stared at the brawl that was quickly erupting in front of her. "Hinata!" Lee shouted as he rolled under the chain. "I can't," Hinata whispered. "These guys, they're real. Someone like me, I'll only get in the way." Hinata slipped down to her knees. Lee wasn't able to respond as he backflipped over both claws. He brought both of his feet down onto the shinobi's heads, knocking them forward. "Go for the bridge builder," the one with the broken mask shouted. "I'll hold this guy off." "Right," the other one shouted as he charged forward. "As if I'd let you." Lee rolled in between the two again. "Konoha Senpu!" Lee delivered a powerful spinning kick to the one who stayed to face him. The man was thrown backwards. The chain that connected the two snapped tight, and the other brother was also pulled backwards. His body was still parallel to the ground when he passed by Lee. The genin didn't waste any time and drilled his elbow into the man's solar plexus, forcefully slamming his body into the ground. "Disconnect the chain," the other shouted. With a loud hissing noise, the chain popped free and the shinobi who was farther back charged forward. "I won't let you pass me." Lee assumed his Goken stance. "Don't get cocky because of a lucky shot." The shinobi on the ground next to Lee swung his body around, bringing his legs forward in a sweep. Lee was caught completely off guard and fell backwards. Meanwhile, the other shinobi jumped clear over him. "Hinata! You have to stop him!" Lee shouted again as he caught himself just before he hit the ground. "Worry about yourself." The man swung his claw forward. Lee pushed off the ground and launched straight into the air, well above the strike. Hinata's body was visibly shaking as the shinobi ran towards her. She cursed and screamed mentally at herself. She had spent 2 whole weeks training for this. For a chance to prove herself in a mission. Yet here she was, scared and on her knees at the first sight of real danger. The man ran right past her, not even bothering to give her a second glance. "You're mine!" he shouted in glee as he swung his claw toward the bridge builder. Like hell! Naruto spread his arms out and took the full force of the blow in the chest. The man was completely taken aback as his arm actually made contact with flesh, and he was even more surprised when the blonde popped into smoke. A shadow clone, but he's just a genin. The man took a slight step back in his surprise. "You better not underestimate me." 2 more Narutos ran forward while one stood next to Tazuna. One clone ran directly in front of the other, and as the shinobi swung at the front one, the second jumped onto the clone's back and leaped forward with his fist outstretched. Naruto's punch connected with the man's jaw, sending him to the ground with a dull thud. "Damn you!" The man spit out blood as he stumbled to his feet. "Not done?" the clone in front asked as he turned around. "Then try this on for size." He outstretched his hand. The other clone grabbed onto his arm. Naruto grit his teeth and pulled the other with all his might, spinning in a circle as he did. The other clone was instantly pulled off the ground, his feet now swinging high in the air. "Naruto clone hammer!" The two shouted as the feet of the clone being swung smashed into the side of the shinobi's face, knocking him down again. This time he didn't get back up. "Impossible!" The other shinobi turned his attention away from Lee as he watched his teammate get knocked out by Naruto. Big mistake. The man felt all the air leave his body as Lee delivered a powerful blow to his stomach. He slipped down to his knees and then fell face first to the ground, also unconscious. Lee let a long breath out. That had been too close. A slow and loud clapping noise reached his ears. He spun around quickly to see Guy-sensei standing there, a huge grin plastered across his face. Well done, students! That was most excellent! Guy walked up to where Naruto and Tazuna were. That was a nice move there, Naruto. It was filled with so much youth. It was nothing. It's thanks to you that I came up with it. Naruto smiled happily at his sensei. Lee. Guy turned his attention to his oldest student. Excellent job in taking command. I knew I could leave it to you. Guy gave his student a thumbs up. A gesture Lee eagerly returned. Hinata felt tears coming to her eyes. While her team had been fighting with all their might, she had sat here and done nothing. She was useless. All the confidence she had been trying to build up led to nothing in the end. Hinata! She looked up at Guy. He turned the thumbs up towards her now. Don't worry about it, you'll get it next time. She couldn't believe it. He forgave her? That easily? But she had failed. How could he? Lee walked in front of her and extended his arm. You should have seen me on my first encounter with common highwaymen. Tenten and Neji had to save my butt. I was so miserable I thought I would never get better. We are not supposed to fight other shinobi yet anyways. Hinata stared at his hand for another few seconds. She then looked over to Naruto. He saw her look and smiled brightly. Thanks for giving me the shot at that guy, Hinata. I really wanted the chance. He put his arms behind his head and gave her an approving nod. Hinata couldn't help but smile. She loved her team. She wiped away her tears and accepted Lee's hand up. As she got up, her eyes took on the most determined look she ever had. I'm sorry, Lee-senpai. Next time will be different. Lee nodded enthusiastically. You guys did excellent. There were a couple times I almost interfered, but I'm glad I didn't. Guy walked over to a tree, set the ninja down, and began tying them up. Fortunately, I was able to get all the information I needed from watching. Information? You let things escalate to that just for information? I thought for sure I was going to die. Tazuna pointed an accusing finger at Guy. He then added in a quieter voice. Although you proved to be pretty skilled, kid. I shouldn't have doubted you. Super sorry. The end was little more than a whisper, but Naruto heard it all. Hey, it's no problem. I was being a brat. So long as we are on the same page now, it's all good. Naruto smiled big at Tazuna. That's the problem. I don't think we are on the same page. Guy walked up to Tazuna. The bridge builder couldn't do anything but look away from the man's piercing gaze. Wait, what do you mean, Guy-sensei? What are you talking about? Naruto looked between the bridge builder and his sensei. He didn't get what was going on here. There shouldn't have been any shinobi. Lee began to explain. C-rank missions are of basic protection. Highwaymen, bandits, maybe rabid animals. There is never an enemy shinobi. This has been my first ever encounter with one myself. The fact that there were shinobi automatically makes this a B rank. Possibly even an A. Exactly, and the shinobi were after you, Tazuna-san. Now explain to me why this is. If you don't, I will end this mission right now. We will turn around and go home. Sensei, your bean guy held up his hand to silence Naruto's protest. I need to know what I'm up against. I can't risk your precious lives without knowing the full extent of the danger. Guy continued to stare intently at Tazuna. Tazuna let out a big sigh. I have no choice but to tell you. He let a dramatic pause take over. But please, get me to my ferryman. I will explain all about it on the boat ride over. Guy looked to consider for a minute. Sensei, please let us continue. It would only make my failure bigger if we don't move forward. Guy turned and looked at Hinata. It was true that she had become more confident lately, but saying she wanted to continue was not something he expected from her any time in the near future. Guy couldn't refuse now. They were less than an hour from the wave anyways. Might as well get that far. Okay, We will get you there. But I warn you, if you are not completely honest with us, I'm cutting you off. Thank you. I'll hold nothing back. Tizuna bowed to them gratefully. Good. Let's set out, team. They left the pair of brothers unconscious under the tree. Not even Guy noticed the masked shinobi who had watched the whole fight. You say the demon brothers were defeated by a couple of genin? A shirtless shinobi slammed down a massive blade in a show of dissatisfaction. That is correct, Zabuza-san. The masked shinobi who had watched the fight said. He was bowed down in front of the tall man before him. The man called Zabuza stared coldly at the boy before him. Tell me, Haku. What do you think of the skill of the team? Haku looked up in surprise at the question. Two of the genin are clearly very new. I would say they haven't been shinobi for even a month. However, the one has the ability to use the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu effortlessly. The other is without a doubt a member of Konoha's Hyuga clan. Judging by her forehead, I'd say she is from the main branch. A Hyuga? Zabuza actually sounded interested now. He didn't say anything further than that though. Yes. As for the other two shinobi, they were peculiar. Haku spoke carefully now. Zabuza said nothing but his narrow eyebrow raised slightly at Haku's word choice. They were both dressed entirely in green spandex, had bowl cuts, and incredibly bushy eyebrows. Haku somehow felt embarrassed just describing the two. Zabuza's face seemed to show some realization, so Haku quit talking. Might Guy? The tall shinobi drawled. Haku didn't reply. Supposedly the only Jonin Konoha capable of matching the famous copy ninja in a fight. The strange green beast. That man? Haku couldn't help but let his doubt show through. But if he is capable of matching the copy ninja, doesn't that effectively tie him for second strongest in the village, only outclassed by the Hokage? If you don't count the Sannin, who have cut their ties from that village, then yes. Haku was surprised to see the gears in Zabuza's brain actively spinning. If what you say is true, I imagine his students didn't use much other than taijutsu, am I right? Zabuza mounted his massive blade onto his back. That's correct, Haku said. The blonde did use shadow clones, but they were extremely well coordinated in hand-to-hand combat. Zabuza seemed to think about everything Haku had just said. I'm going to need your help for this one, Haku. Zabuza-san? The masked boy asked curiously. We're going, come on. Zabuza began walking off, a confused Haku trailing right behind him. Guy's team arrived on the bank of a giant lake. Due to the thick mist, they weren't capable at all of seeing the other end of it. Over here. They heard a man give a hoarse whisper from their left. They turned and saw a man with a small rowboat waving them over. Tizuna breathed a sigh of relief. You have no idea how happy I am to still see you here. Tizuna led the shinobi over to the ferryman and boarded without preamble. Guy's team did the same and they were quickly on their way. This is what you got to help you, children? The ferryman looked at Team Guy questionably. It's all I could afford. Tizuna held his hands in defense. Besides, don't underestimate them. They've saved my life once already. The ferryman still looked doubtful. I still don't know why it was necessary. Guy caught Tizuna's attention. You say all you could afford? Is your land really that bad off? What happened that could put you in such a state? Gatu, was Tizuna's easy answer. Guy's eyes widened in recognition. I see you've heard of him. Yes, the same Gatu that runs the shipping company. He may seem like just a businessman, but underneath he is little more than a pint-sized gangster, selling drugs, women, whole countries. He is the man after my life. Naruto, Lee and Hinata stared wide-eyed at his story. But I don't understand. Why would such a powerful man want you dead? Lee had been the first to find his voice. Because of the bridge. Tizuna gestured to his left, and they all turned to see a massive structure take shape in the mist. Wow, it's so big. That's incredible. You're making that? Naruto had newfound respect for the man they were guarding. But why should he oppose you making this bridge? Hinata, too, couldn't believe the size of it. Our country is cut off from the mainland. We do all our trading by boats. Gatu bought out all our shipping industries and now has a monopoly of the land. He has made us very poor. The only thing standing between his complete control is the completion of the bridge. If I complete it, I can break his grasp. Tazuna slammed his fist into his palm. He worked himself up during his speech. After a few deep breaths, he continued talking. By the time I realized Gato was sending shinobi after me, we were too poor to hire higher level protection. There is no way we could afford it. I just needed something. It looks like I lucked out with you guys, though. Tazuna sat up on his knees and clasped his hands in front of himself. Please. You have to protect me. For the sake of my country. For my daughter and grandson, I need to complete this bridge. I know it's not much for now, but in a few years we would be able to pay you back in full. We just need to get on our feet first. The three genin all had tears forming on their eyes. His story had clearly touched them. They all turned to their sensei. Guy sighed. How could I possibly sleep well at night if I turn you down now? Okay, we'll do it. Guy gave him the thumbs up and one of his flashy smiles. The effect was slightly ruined by the mist, however. Thank you so much. My country owes you our existence for this. Tazuna wiped away tears he had been holding back. Don't thank us yet, the next group won't be pushovers like the last two, I may even have trouble soon here. His three students looked at him in disbelief. The same thought ran through all their minds. How could anyone be trouble for someone as fast as their sensei? Soon the boat went under a tunnel and they came out into a small river. Wow, look at that, there are trees growing in the water. Naruto looked around excitedly at everything in this new land. To his disappointment, nothing else stood out all that much. At least the river trees had been cool. The boat docked a short while later. This is as far as I go, Tazuna. Everyone disembarked from the boat as the ferryman talked. I thank you for making this risk for me. Tazuna bowed to the man as he paddled his way back down the river. They watched him go until he disappeared from sight. Okay, team, Guy said in a normal tone. From here on out we are going to be moving slowly. We're in enemy territory. Hinata, I need you to take up the rear behind Tazuna. Naruto and Lee stand on either side. I'll take the lead. Don't drop your guard until we are in the village. Yes, Guy-sensei. All his students replied in hushed voices. They followed their sensei's directions immediately. Hey, no need to be so serious, Tazuna said nervously. You guys took care of that last group no problem. Which is why now we have to be extra cautious. They'll send out the strongest they got now. Worst case possible, they send a jonin. Guy continued to speak at a normal volume. A jonin? You mean like yourself? Tazuna gazed around the misty area nervously. Don't worry, Tazuna-san. No matter how tough the opponent, I won't let him get you. Guy turned and smiled at their client. How touching. A raspy voice echoed. Everyone suddenly grew tense. Hinata, Guy said hurriedly. Byakugan. Hinata activated it before her sensei could say anything more. Her eyes grew wide at what she saw. Everyone! Duck! Hinata dropped to the ground as she shouted. Naruto and Lee each grabbed an arm on Tazuna and pulled him down with them. Guy didn't bother to drop at all. He turned just as a giant spinning sword appeared out of the mist. Guy stuck his arm out and caught the blade right by the handle. Oh, not bad. The voice rang from multiple directions at once. This sword. Guy stared at the blade he was holding. You must be the ex-Kiri shinobi. One of the 7 swordsmen, Momochi Zabuza. I'm touched. You know my name. The voice came from directly above him. Guy turned his gaze upwards. A shirtless man was falling straight towards him. A replica of the blade Guy was holding was also in his hand. Guy swung the sword in his hand up as Zabuza swung his down. The blades connected and Guy's dissolved into water upon contact. TCH, a water clone. Guy cursed and took a small leap backwards, completely avoiding Zabuza's blade. Lee, Hinata, Naruto. Surround Tazuna. No matter what happens, protect him with your life. Yes. The 3 genin formed a triangle around the still-down Tazuna. No matter what happens? Zabuza chuckled as he pulled his blade from the ground. You might be giving me too much credit there, might Guy. I make a point of never underestimating my opponent. Guy slipped into a Goken stance as he eyed his opponent up and down. We'll see about that. Zabuza took a step backwards and appeared to be swallowed whole by the thick mist. I see, so this isn't a natural mist at all. This is your doing. Guy nodded to himself as he gazed around the thick mist. Observant, aren't you? I wonder how observant you are when I'm chopping your client to pieces. The three genin spun around in surprise to see Zabuza standing right in between them, his sword angled at Tezuna's neck. And no! Tezuna yelped in fear and tried to move backwards. Not so fast. Guy appeared right there a second later, his foot drilling into the top of Zabuza's head. The man broke apart into water and Guy's undeterred foot continued on right into the ground, creating a small crater that his genin and Tezuna stumbled into. Sorry about that, team, but I can't afford to hold back here. Guy spun around as he talked, and caught Zabuza's sword again as the Excuri shinobi thrust it forward. Guy took a step forward and delivered a powerful punch into Zabuza's face, breaking him into water. How unyouthful, hiding behind your clones! Guy shouted into the mist as he took a couple steps forward. Wow, so this is a battle between Jonin? Lee whispered in awe. Naruto even nodded in appreciation. It's on a completely different level from that battle we had earlier. This is so cool. Naruto-kun. Hinata chided lightly but couldn't keep a small smile from gracing her face. Hey. Tezuna sounded worried. Don't forget about me. I nearly died already. You do not have to worry about that. Guy-sensei could not possibly lose this fight, Lee said enthusiastically. Just watch. He is about to get serious. Everyone did as Lee said and turned their attention to the powerful man in front of them. Get serious, huh? Zabuza's mocking voice echoed throughout the misty field. Doesn't matter how serious you get, you'll never find me in here. I am an expert of the silent killing technique. When I am in the mist, I am unbeatable. Provided there is any. Guy took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He then appeared to start performing some strange form of Tai Chi. The only sound that could be heard in the mist was Guy's deep, but somehow calm breathing. Are you taking me for a fool? What are you trying to do? Zabuza's question was answered a second later as Guy's eyes shot wide open. First gate, open! Guy widened his stance and waved his arms widely in front of himself. A second later and a great wind passed through the whole area, dissolving the mist as it blew. What in the… Tezuna was the only one who was capable of saying anything at all. I am possible. Zabuza stood in plain sight now, right at the edge of the riverbank. Before he could even blink, Guy was right in front of him, a powerful fist buried into his stomach. Zabuza was rocketed across the water. He hit the surface but was flying too fast to sink in. Instead, he bounced once, twice, 3 times before he was able to get stable enough to skid to his feet. Massive waves rolled across the water from the multiple impacts Zabuza had made on it. Why, you bastard! Zabuza's face wraps were stained red around his mouth. His sword was somehow still in his hand. I'll make you pay for that. I'd like to see you try. Guy stepped onto the water himself, and was immediately racing towards his opponent. He moved at such a great speed that he almost appeared to be gliding across the water. Zabuza hurled his sword into the air and began running through a set of hand seals. Suetun, Suryuban no Jutsu. The water directly in front of Zabuza rose up and formed a large orb. As it completed, Zabuza's sword fell back towards him. Stretching out his hand, the Excuri shinobi caught it effortlessly. He then swung the sword forward dramatically. As if the orb had been waiting for the signal, it shot off a high number of slim whips of water. No chance an attack like that will hit me. Guy charged undeterred into the thick of the attack. Every time it seemed like a whip would hit him, Guy would just vanish and appear unharmed a couple steps farther ahead. In no time he reached the orb and with a powerful spinning kick he destroyed it completely. TCH, damn! Zabuza stepped forward and swung his sword. Guy ducked under the swing and delivered another powerful kick that Zabuza jumped over. The two jonin then began exchange viscous blows. He's so fast. Tezuna felt hope build up inside him. Something he hadn't felt for a long time. Yeah, get him, Guy-sensei. Lee and Naruto cheered together. When did Guy-sensei get that fast? That's incredible. Naruto couldn't believe the sudden increase in power their sensei had just received. It's the Hashiman, Lee answered. Naruto gave him a confused look. Guy-sensei opened the first of 8 gates. Each time you open up a gate, your power increases significantly, with risk of course. Supposedly, opening all 8 would give even a genin the power to match a Kage. Guy-sensei has so gotta teach me that. He's kicking ass with it. Naruto practically drooled at the idea of being capable of matching the old man. Something isn't right. Hinata interrupted everyone's good mood with just that one phrase. She was staring out at the water, her Byakugan fully active. Come on, Hinata! What are you talking about? Guy-sensei has got this. Naruto waved off Hinata's worries quickly. No. It isn't that, I just could have sworn I saw something at the edge of my vision a moment ago. Another person, with a mask. Everyone then noticed Hinata's Byakugan was still active. Very suddenly, she spun around. It shocked everyone else so bad that they did as well. What they saw surprised them. Ah, so much for sneaking up on you guys. Those eyes of yours are troublesome for sure. A masked boy who didn't sound any older than they were stood only about 10 paces behind them. How did you get here so fast? Hinata whispered. Just a moment ago he hadn't been within her range at all. Now he was practically right next to them. Speed is an important aspect of any shinobi. I would think you would know that better than anyone, with that man as your sensei and everything. The boy spoke pleasantly to them. No one was able to sense any evil intent. Yet they all kept their guard up regardless. Are you a member of Kirigakure's hunter squad? Lee asked curiously as he stared at the insignia on the boy's mask. Haku rubbed the mark of the wave gently as he considered how to answer. No, I am not, he finally said. Truth is, I am actually with Zabuza-san. We killed the hunter Nin that was after us, and I took his mask. Without warning, a group of shuriken were flying straight at him. How unpleasant. Haku stepped lightly out of the way, right into Lee's waiting attack. I got you! Lee swung his leg in a high kick. To his complete surprise, Haku caught his kick without even flinching. I apologize, but you'll be coming with me. Haku began running through one-handed seals. When he finished, a mirror of eyes quickly formed behind him. Bushy brow. Lee-senpai. Hinata and Naruto both charged forward. Too late, I'm afraid. Haku stepped into the ice and pulled Lee with him. Hey, take care of Tazuna-san. Don't worry about me. That was the last thing Lee shouted before he was pulled into the mirror. As if it was magic, they both vanished. Naruto and Hinata's screams reached the ears of the two battling jonin. Guy spun around just in time to see Lee being sucked into the mirror. What the hell? Guy stared in horror and took 2 nervous steps towards his team. Hold on right there, my guy. You have a choice to make here. Guy spun around, his eyes glaring. If looks could kill, Zabuza would be dead 108 times over. My little pupil there has just dumped your genin into Gata's stronghold, but he'll be coming back in just a second. Now here's where your choice is. You let me go back to the hideout, and I'll make sure nothing happens to him. In exchange, you can keep my pupil over there as collateral. Guy took a step towards Zabuza, ready to continue the fight. Or you can continue to fight me, but even if you win, Haku will have taken your other 2 students, and there will be no way for you to ever find them. So what will it be? Let me go and have a shot at saving all 3 students? Or kill me and lose them? How can I trust you to keep your bargain? Guy seethed between clenched teeth. I still need to kill the bridge builder. Zabuza answered easily. Bring him and Haku on top of that bridge in 2 weeks. Also, be sure Haku has his weapons. Make sure no one else comes, not even your other 2 genin. I'll show up with your last one. We'll finish our battle for good at that time. You shameless bastard. Guy grit his teeth. If even a hair on my precious student is hurt, I'll make you wish you were never born. With that, Guy turned and disappeared facing his students. Zabuza let out a deep laugh as he made his own hasty retreat. The whole thing would have been pointless if Guy somehow managed to follow him after all. Naruto and Hinata ran straight into the mirror and bounced off of it completely. No, you bastard! Give bushy brow back. Naruto whipped out a kunai and began stabbing the mirror with all his might. HS blade broke off completely from the handle on his fifth swing. Let me try. Hinata's past insecurities were completely forgotten as she tried with all her might to save her teammate. She channeled all the chakra possible into her hands until they were both covered in what appeared to be blue lions. Juho Sashiken. Hinata struck again and again with her enhanced palms. Are you sure this is alright? They both spun around to see Haku stepping out from another mirror right behind them. If I had wanted, I could have killed the bridge builder right here. You both left him completely unguarded. Fortunately for you, Zabuza-san has the unfortunate weakness of liking to mentally torture his opponents, so he'll live for today. Tazuna took a couple nervous steps away from the mirror. You bastard! Where did you take Bushy Brow? Naruto shouted. Your friend is safe. Fear not, we'll have more time to talk later. Haku began forming more one-handed signs. Before he could even get halfway through them, however, Guy appeared. Get away from my students! Haku didn't stand a chance. Guy's fist buried itself into his stomach, and the boy was out cold before he even knew it. His mirrors shattered and fell to pieces as Haku's body went limp where he stood. Naruto, Hinata! Guy turned himself and Haku fell to the ground unceremoniously. Lee. The two genin looked at each and then back at their sensei. They were speechless. Hey, I'm sorry! This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Tazuna threw himself at Guy's feet. Please, I'm sorry, forgive me. Tears freely fell from the man's eyes as he begged for forgiveness. Guy clenched his teeth as he stared down at the unconscious boy they now had prisoner. He then turned back to the water and inhaled deeply. Damn you! Momochi Zabuza! Chapter 8 Prisoner 9997 9998 9999 10,000 Lee plopped down to the ground as he finished his push-ups. He was exhausted. Sweat dripped from every pore in his body and his stomach rumbled hungrily. There was no chance of him getting any food though. At least not this late at night. He had already been held captive for 3 days, but to be honest, Lee never really felt like he was a prisoner here. He wandered around as he pleased. He ate what little food they had to offer in this crappy hideout. In fact, the room he was currently in, his bedroom, was a considerable amount better than what some of the others had to put up with. Lee could think of only one reason his life could be this leisurely here. Yet those two words brought just a foul taste to his mouth. Momochi Zabuza. When Lee first fell free from the ice mirror, he found himself inside this very room. He later learned that it had been the room the kid with the mirrors used to stay in. Lee had cautiously snuck around at first, trying to get a feel for where he was. When he looked outside, he was completely surprised. He was near the very top of a huge tower. Forest and swamp stretched as far as his eye could see. Lee had felt his knees go weak as he realized there was no likely chance of escape from here. It had been at that moment that he had been spotted by a couple of big-looking thugs. Lee easily dispatched of the two of them with some taijutsu, but not before they had sounded an alarm. The once seemingly empty tower was now swarming with despicable-looking men. Lee battled endlessly while he tried to flee from the entire gang of them. Just when he thought he was at his limit and was actually going to be captured, Zabuza arrived. This trash is my hostage! The man roared while holding his hand onto the hilt of his massive sword. No one is to touch him but me! Got that? Lee couldn't believe it. Was this man actually protecting him? That thought was instantly crossed from Lee's mind as the shirtless man turned and buried his fist in Lee's gut. The green-clad boy fell to ground spitting up blood. The sound of a cane hitting the floor caused all the men in the room to spread wide to either side of the hallway they all stood in. Lee's sight was kind of blurry from having been hit so hard, but he was still able to make out the figure of a very short man walking down the now open path. Every step he took, he smacked his cane down on the floor, not that he seemed to have any trouble walking. Finally, the man stopped walking. He was still quite a distance away. Lee guessed just outside the range of Zabuza's massive blade. It was at this moment that Lee realized this man was probably Gatu. Zabuza. A nasally voice fit for the short man called the demon's name. Tell me, why instead of the head of a master bridge builder, who may I add threatens to destroy my whole control over this country, do you bring me a child? There was a change of plans, Gatu. Zabuza practically spat. Despite being hired by this man, the demon clearly had little respect for him. Oh, do tell. Li's vision was now clear enough to see that this tiny man had several golden teeth and rings on every finger. His cane seemed to be tipped with a huge diamond. One of the shinobi that the bridge builder hires happens to be Might Guy, one of the strongest shinobi in Konohagakure. Not even I would be capable of beating him in a fair fight. Li couldn't agree more with that statement. Gata pushed up his small black glasses. So was that masked brat you had with you taken out then? I don't see him around. No, I purposely allowed Might Guy to take him hostage. What? Why? That makes no sense. The short man practically shouted. Li had just thought the exact same, but Gata wasn't done. He might very well be dead already. That's a waste of a resource. Might Guy won't kill him. Zabuza spoke as if he was talking to a child now. As long as he keeps Haku alive, he'll believe that his student here is alive. So what if he lives? How does this benefit you in any way? Gata slammed his cane down as he spoke. Zabuza sighed and ran one hand through his short hair. You don't get anything, do you? The short man sneered at this comment. Worry causes heavy stress on the body. Stress causes you to lose focus. In the shinobi world, the more stress you have built up, the more deadly for you it can become. Not only does Might Guy have this to worry about, but he still has to protect the bridge builder while keeping an eye on Haku. This means he'll have to sleep very lightly and very little. By the time we next meet, he'll be exhausted. Gatu appeared to mull this thought over in his head for a few moments. Whatever, do what you want, the man finally said before turning away and walking in the other direction. The crowd of thugs that had been around them dispersed slowly, all of them grumbling. Zabuza, too, started to walk away. You are wrong, you know. The man turned to look at Li as he spoke. Guy-sensei cannot possibly lose to you. No matter what, no one can defeat him. The older man snorted. Your faith in others isn't befitting of a shinobi. You better grow up. Zabuza's foot was the last thing Li had seen before passing out. The sound of footsteps outside of Li's door pulled him away from his thoughts of the past. Silently, the boy got up and walked over to his wall, standing right next to his door. The sound of quiet voices reached his ears. Two shadows appeared right in front of his door. What if we get caught? Li heard one voice whisper. Relax, would you? Everyone is out, including this kid. We got nothing to worry about. Another gruff voice answered. Yeah, but he's a shinobi, you know? Can we really kill him? Li's eyes widened slightly. They were planning to kill him? The other man chuckled very quietly. He's a genin, still wet behind the ears. We got this. But what about Momchi-san? Surely he'll raise hell about it. The other man continued to spout worries. Listen, no one likes the guy anyways, besides, how can he prove it was us? Let's just do this. The door to Li's room swung open after the man said this. Li tensed up and very quietly slipped into his Goken stance. Without warning, a hand reached out from the darkness and touched his shoulder. Li had to put every ounce of his shinobi training into effect to keep from yelping. He slowly turned around to see Zabuza standing there, one hand on his shoulder, the other in front of his face, his finger making the quiet sign. Li couldn't help but wonder when and how he had entered the room. It just went to prove that the man really earned his title of Jonin and one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. The two men stepped into the room and both stopped as they eyed the bed from where they stood. Huh! That's strange, he's not in bed. These were the last words either one of them uttered as Zabuza stepped forward and swung his sword in a horizontal arc. Both men's heads were sliced completely off before they even had a chance to scream. Blood sprayed everywhere, painting the walls and door and the two shinobi. Li's eyes were wide with shock. This hadn't been the first time he had seen death, but these were the most senseless kills he had ever seen. Zabuza-san! Li shouted as he rounded on the tall man who was sliding his sword back into place on his back. Thanks aren't necessary, kid. I just can't afford these assholes messing up my plans. Zabuza said as he stepped over the headless bodies in an attempt to leave the room. You think I want to thank you? Lee roared. You just killed these men without even blinking. You did not have to go that far. Simply disabling them would have been enough. Lee stepped into the pool of blood that was forming at his feet. I thought I told you to grow up already. Zabuza's voice remained level as he turned and looked at the genin. Do you really think these men would have learned from that? Lee opened his mouth to respond but snapped it shut immediately. You know it too, these men would have just gotten angrier. They would have been back with more men. I did everyone here a favor by ending these two idiots' lives before they involved more of them. This may be hard for a goody little brat like you to understand, but the only way these people will ever learn is through death. The faster you understand that, the longer I guarantee you'll live. Lee clenched his hands shut and grit his teeth hard. How did you become this way? Lee's question caught the taller man off guard. Lee looked up when he didn't hear a response. What happened to you that you've grown up so twisted and without emotions? Lee was shouting now. Other thugs had been woken by the noise and were coming to check it out. Upon seeing the blood, the noise level increased even further. Do you care at all about that kid you abandoned with my team? What are these people to you? Aren't they your allies? Listen, you brat. Zabuza grabbed Lee by the collar of his clothes and hoisted him into the air. I live for myself and only myself. If it wasn't for Zabuza's face bandages, he probably would have spit in Lee's face. These little shits you call my allies mean nothing to me. They are only tools of which can be disposed of. The same goes for Haku. He's simply just a little more sharp a sword than these dull, broken pieces of junk. That's why he's with your team. Even Gato is just a tool, one to supply me with money. Zabuza dropped Lee onto the ground. The boy fell into the pool of blood on his butt. He hadn't expected the early release. He stared up at Zabuza with wide eyes. He never knew such a man could exist in this world. The big man turned and walked away. The now big crowd of thugs quickly moved aside as he walked through. No one wanted to mess with him. I'll find out how got like this. There must be a reason, Lee whispered under his breath. Haku slowly rolled out of the tent he was in. He stood up and did a few stretches. If his internal clock was working correctly, then it should be about 4:30 in the morning. This was his third day being prisoner, and while Haku was able to walk around somewhat freely, he really felt like the word described his situation quite justly. Haku thought this as he walked out of the small clearing that Team Guy had set up camp in. Going somewhere? Haku would have jumped had he not already been used to this. Mike Guy leaned up against the back of a tree, staring at Haku intently. I just have to use the bathroom. I have no intention of harming the bridge builder. Haku walked over to a small bush and pulled the front of his kimono uniform up. It had been like this the whole time. Haku felt completely suffocated. No matter where or how he moved, it seemed this man's eyes were on him. Yet maybe that was a good thing. It meant Zabuza's plan was working, didn't it? Haku had to wonder. 3 days straight and the man didn't even appear remotely fatigued. Instead, his energy remained boundless. It was incredibly eerie. The sound of yawning right next to him made Haku realize he was losing his focus. Naruto stood right next to him and was also taking a leak. Haku was painfully reminded that it wasn't just Mike Guy. This whole team seemed to have unlimited energy. They were always up incredibly early. Naruto and Hinata spent all day training these past couple days while Guy would take Haku to the bridge to keep an eye on him and guard the bridge builder at the same time. Haku hated it this way. They didn't ever bind him up or anything. That was how completely hopeless Haku was in this situation that they didn't even feel the need to restrain him. Albeit, they had taken away his senbon. I'm going to kick your ass when this 2 weeks is up. Haku glanced briefly at the blonde who was peeing right next to him. You don't know anything about me, Haku replied simply. Saying things like that set Naruto off pretty easily. For that matter, anything he said set the blonde off. You asshole! You kidnapped Bushy Brow. I'll never forgive you for that. Naruto zipped his pants up and turned in the other direction, going back to their clearing. He hadn't attempted to hit him as Haku had expected. Perhaps his sensei had given him a big enough warning after last time. After all, they couldn't afford to rough him up too much. Lee's life depended on it. Tell me again why I should believe that you can't just use those mirrors to get back to Gata's base. Haku sighed. Guy had asked him the same question a couple times before already. He was probably trying to say if he would change up his story at all. I can only create mirrors in a location that is within my range of vision. After creating them, it takes a lot of chakra to sustain them. Holding up just that one at such a distance was incredibly taxing. When I lost consciousness, that mirror shattered, just like the ones you saw. Haku repeated what he had told him before, word for word. Silence rang between the two for a few moments. Are you perhaps hoping that I could take you to Lee-san that way? Haku knew that wasn't what Guy wanted, but maybe he could get the man to reveal some form of fatigue. Of course not. You heard what I told Naruto. Lee has a much better chance of surviving if we play things by Zabuza's rules. He's really much more interested in killing me and Tazuna-san than him. Guy stared down at the boy before him. Although, I must say, I feel badly for you. He clearly has no affection for you at all, even as a pupil. I am not a pupil. I am Zabuza-san's tool. I am to be used as he sees fit and disposed of when I've gone dull. That is my only purpose in life. Haku spoke the words that he had long since etched into his heart. You really are a sad child. Guy sounded sincere as he spoke. You remind me a lot of Naruto, in fact. Haku almost gave an uncharacteristic snort but stopped himself. If he knows what it's like to be alone, then he must be truly strong. It's not the pain of being alone that makes one strong. It's for protecting the ones you love that you become strong. Guy spoke as if he was Haku's sensei now. Haku turned around and walked back into the clearing now as well. Having been alone amplifies that desire. Guy didn't respond. Instead, he followed the boy leisurely back into the clearing. Hinata was up now and had a small fire going. Naruto sat next to her, skinning a couple of rabbits the two of them had caught last night. Haku was impressed that neither of them complained. Instead of being inside a warm house, using a kitchen stove, they were out here. Tazuna had offered to let the two of them stay in his home with him and his family, but they had both declined. Naruto had said it felt more like an actual mission when they were camping out. Haku suspected it was actually so they could get right to training. Do either of you have any questions on what I've written down in your scrolls? Guy asked as he watched Hinata throw the rabbits into the pot. Guy had written scrolls about how they were supposed to train while he and Haku were at the bridge. Of course, Haku knew he had done this simply so he couldn't learn how they were preparing. The less he knew, the more beneficial it was for them. They both shook their heads at his question. We've been doing like you suggested and have talked to each other when either of us has had a question about what's on the scroll. Naruto answered for the both of them. Does that mean you've been the only one asking the questions? Haku couldn't describe it, but there was a certain joy he got from picking on the blonde. He had never gotten this kind of enjoyment before. Maybe spending time with this group was beginning to erode his brain. Naruto blushed and instead of shouting a comeback decided to glare quietly at the other boy. Guess that means I'm right. Haku smiled lightly. Something really was wrong with him. Your food. A bowl of rabbit meat was tossed to him. Haku barely caught it before he turned his gaze to the owner of the cold voice. Thank you, Hinata-san. Haku inclined his head before grabbing a pair of chopsticks to eat. The Hyuga girl rarely spoke around him, and when she did it was always with a very clipped tone. Haku didn't blame her either. He had stolen their teammate. They had no reason to treat him kindly. With all the food having been passed out, silence reigned over the clearing as the group ate their food. Naruto was of course the first one done. He inhaled everything with such incredible haste that it made Haku kind of sick. No one should be able to consume food like that. Yet, Might Guy was always a close second. Haku would be willing to bet Lee was much the same. Only he and Hinata took their time eating their meal. Hey Guy-sensei. Naruto talked to his teacher enthusiastically. It didn't fit the mood of the morning at all. Yes, my young student? Haku winced. Yet Guy's response fit even less. Haku imagined his voice could probably be heard in the nearby village. Teach me how to open the hashiman. Bushy Brow was telling me about it, and it sounds so cool. Haku's ears perked up at this. Maybe the man would shed some light on that mysterious power he had used which easily blew away Zabuza's mist. Might Guy let out a loud boisterous laugh. Opening the gates is no easy feat, Naruto. While I would be more than happy to teach you at a later date, focus on the training you have for now. Lee can open a couple of them himself. When we get him back, I'll have him assist me in teaching you. Naruto nodded excitedly. That sounds like a good idea. I really want to get training now. Naruto sat up abruptly and began doing a series of stretches. Haku couldn't believe how fast the kid's attitude changed. It almost seemed like he had a switch. That's the spirit. Train on, Naruto. Haku cringed at Guy's continued use of his booming voice. If you are done, Haku-san, let us be off. They have work to be done. Guy turned his attention to the black-haired boy. Yeah, alright. Haku got up and turned to Hinata. The food was delicious again, he said as he bowed. Hinata didn't respond as she continued to nibble on her own food. Guy lightly grabbed a hold of Haku's shoulder and led him away from the clearing. Naruto and Hinata were left with another awkward silence as he continued stretching. Naruto-kun. Hinata sounded much more timid now that Haku wasn't around. Yeah, what's up, Hinata? Naruto stopped his stretching and turned to stare at her. She blushed slightly from the attention. It was strange. When they were in a group she could talk to him normally, but alone, even during such a serious mission, she found herself reverting back to how she used to be. I had a question about something here on my scroll. Hinata almost breathed a sigh of relief. She was still able to keep her stutter from returning. That was a good sign. No, you don't. Naruto caught her lie without even thinking about it. Hinata's face turned very red at how straightforward an answer he gave. Listen, I appreciate that you're trying to make me feel better, but I don't really mind all that much, Hinata. You're really smart. Hinata's face remained red for a different reason now. Sorry, she muttered out. Don't apologize. Naruto sat down next to her. You're always so nice, there's no need to be sorry. Anyways, what was it in your scroll again? Hakusho Kaiten. Hinata whispered, awe heavy in her voice. Just thinking about it made her forget her embarrassment. It is the ultimate defense taught only to the Hyuga of the main branch. That Guy-sensei would actually know how they do it is incredible. Well, that's Guy-sensei for you. If it's taijutsu, he can do it or at least knows it. Naruto spoke highly for one of the only men he had truly come to respect. Although, I'd wish he'd teach me something cool like a move. My list kinda sucks. Naruto pulled out the scroll he had. Playing the rock, paper, scissors with myself didn't make sense at all until you explained it. Naruto continued to talk. While it's cool that I know what happens when they pop, I don't see how that can benefit me entirely. Guess it's one of those look underneath the underneath deals. Although, training my clones to survive multiple hits is going to be useful, if I can actually get it. Naruto let his scroll flop down to the ground. You can do it, Naruto-kun. Hinata cheered for him quietly. You can do anything. She added in an even quieter tone. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Hinata. For bushy brow, we'll definitely master this stuff. Naruto stood up quickly and resumed his stretches. Yes, for Lee-senpai. Hinata got up and also began stretching. I can also do it because you're here with me. Hinata wanted to add this aloud but chose against it. You don't blame me, do you? Hinata was surprised by Naruto's sudden question. Blame you? She didn't understand where that thought had even come from. Yeah, I mean, I'm the one who wanted to do the C-rank mission and all. Doesn't that make it my fault that things turned out this way? If I had just been okay with training, then things wouldn't have happened this way. You're wrong! Hinata startled Naruto with her shout. Why, you can't blame yourself. They had both stopped stretching again, and Naruto stared at Hinata in shock. C-rank missions aren't supposed to involve such powerful shinobi. It was supposed to be basic protection. Besides, it would have happened to someone. It just happened to be us, so please, Naruto-kun, don't blame yourself. Hinata suddenly ran at Naruto and embraced him in a hug, tears slowly leaking down her eyes. Hey. I get it. Naruto lightly patted the girl's back. I'm sorry, Hinata. I won't say anything stupid again. Naruto slowly unentangled himself. Sorry. Hinata quickly began wiping her tears away. I didn't mean to get so worked up. I keep telling you not to apologize. You don't do anything wrong. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he spoke. Besides, you're right. If it's anyone's fault, it's that Haku guy. Hinata nodded gently. It's strange though. I can't bring myself to feel any resentment towards him. Really? I thought you were ready to knock his lights out the way you look at him. Naruto was surprised to hear Hinata's confession. No, I learned to act that way around my family. It's the best way to hide my emotions. Hinata hated bringing up her family, even if it was with Naruto. I kinda get what you mean though. Naruto quickly steered the conversation away. Even he knew that speaking about Hinata's family was taboo. Who would have guessed that he'd have that kind of face? Huh? Hinata looked up at Naruto in confusion. I mean, honestly, that dude is cuter than Sakura-chan. I really thought he was a girl at first. Naruto blushed and laughed nervously as he talked. Pretty weird, huh? Hinata's face fell as Naruto spoke. How could it be? She lost even to another boy. It was completely humiliating. Naruto-kun, you idiot. Hinata turned away from him and resumed her stretches. Hey, Hinata. Naruto called to her, but she didn't respond. What did I do? Come on. Hinata! Haku continued to hammer away as he drove the wooden plank into the supports of the bridge. He found it terribly ironic. It was his mission to kill the bridge builder, yet here he was, helping construct the bridge. Life sure is strange. Haku mumbled aloud to himself. Sure is. Tazuna said as he walked up next to him and began laying down more boards. He set to work at hammering himself. Is this all right? Haku asked him. There are plenty nails lying around. One flick of my wrist, and they'll be buried in your neck. Tazuna started sweating slightly but responded in a calm voice. You won't do that. How can you be so sure? Haku was perplexed. The man wasn't lying to him. I get a different feeling from you than I did that Zabuza character. Tazuna paused as he thought about his answer. You don't like to kill. I'm not sure how I can tell, but I know it. In fact, I don't think you like hurting others at all. You only do it because that Zabuza guy tells you to. In actuality, you're super nice. I'm impressed. Haku continued to nail away at his board. Is that perhaps the insight that comes from old age? Tazuna let out a long laugh. I'm not that old. Even if I am a grandpa. I just know a good kid when I see one. Silence passed between the two of them after his last comment. Tazuna, we need to talk. Haku and the old man looked up to see another equally old man standing there nervously. He held an uneasy eye on Haku. Jichi, how can I help you? Tazuna smiled at his longtime friend and stood up as he greeted him. Listen, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to quit working on the bridge. Tazuna's smile slowly disappeared off his face as Jichi spoke. Not you too, Tazuna whispered. Look, Tazuna, I understand that we're doing a good thing, but what's the point if Gata has you killed? What good will it do? Jichi tried to implore Tazuna to see his reason. Haku felt his palms sweat as the man talked. He continued to hammer away in an attempt to distract himself. Let's all quit. Quit building this bridge. Impossible! Tazuna shouted, surprising not only Jichi, but Haku as well. This is our bridge. We began building it together, and I intend to finish it. This bridge is a symbol of our nation's courage. If we stop now, then Gata truly has won. Tazuna stared hard at Jichi for a minute. You know what? Just don't bother showing up again. I'll finish this bridge even if it's by myself. Tazuna walked past his once friend, knocking his shoulder as he went. Tazuna, don't be this way. Jichi called after him. Shove it! Tazuna grabbed another plank of wood and brought it back to where Haku was. He immediately set back to work. Jichi sighed and stood there for another few moments, trying to think of something to say. In the end, he gave up and walked away. Tazuna-san, Haku said quietly. Tazuna made a small noise to show Haku he was listening. I have no right to say this, but until the 2 weeks is up, I will help you build this bridge. Haku wasn't sure what compelled him to say that. Maybe it had been the old man's speech, but there was no taking it back now. It was out there. Tazuna didn't respond, and Haku thought he was still mad until he looked over. The man was smiling, even if just a little. Unbeknown to either, Guy had watched the whole thing. There was an unreadable expression on his face. Things had been relatively peaceful in Gatta's hideout for a few days since the incident. No one dared try to take Lee's life after the violent decapitation of 2 of their own. Lee had been here a full week now. Despite what he had said, he had made no progress in finding out anything about Zabuza. Lee wasn't deterred though. As long as things remained calm, he should be able to get the chance. Yet, perhaps inevitably, things did not remain calm. Gatta returned today from some sort of business trip and he was seething mad. Where is he? Where is the bastard that hacked up 2 of my men? The short man strolled around the cafeteria of the tower, his cane clacking menacingly against the floor. All the thugs sat at tables and at their meals. It reminded Lee of school, which was kind of a funny thought. What's all this racket about? The man Gatta was looking for spoke up as he strolled leisurely into the room. You! What the hell do you think you're doing? Gatta pointed his cane at the shirtless shinobi. Getting food. Even shinobi eat, you know? Lee hadn't realized it at first, but Zabuza actually had a sense of humor. A twisted one, but a sense of one nonetheless. That's not what I'm talking about. Spit flew from Gatta's mouth and into the faces of several seated thugs. They didn't dare breathe a word of it though. Why did 2 of my men have to die, huh? If you ask me, they were doing me a favor. What has that kid done for us? He runs around the place all day working out like a maniac. He doesn't contribute to anything, yet he continues to eat our food. That's wasted money right there. How are you going to reimburse me for this, Zabuza? Gatta slammed his cane down so hard Lee thought it would break. I'll bring you the bridge builder's head. That'll cover everything. Zabuza replied simply. No! I've had enough. Zabuza's eyes narrowed at Gatta's words. You cost too much for no results. I'm through with you. We'll raid the village ourselves. Right, men? A chorus of cheers hailed from all the thugs in the room. Lee took their excitement as a chance to slip into the back corner and just watch. He slower pulled his weights off from where he was. Just try it, Zabuza answered. The lot of you won't even get close to touching that man. No one here has the power to take down a jonin. We'll see about that. One man picked up one of his weapons. These men carried them with them at all times, so the cafeteria was loitered with them. I'll take your head first. Then the bridge builders. The man charged forward. As if he started a chain reaction, dozens of them charged forward with him. Zabuza laughed happily as the men charged at him. He grabbed his sword and swung it downwards, splitting the first man who had charged clean in half. Everyone else stopped at that moment. Zabuza looked up and they all took a couple steps back. Those weren't the eyes of someone who was saying, "Didiman." Someone shouted. Is that it? I get down one of you and the rest lose their spines? Come on, you cowards! I thought we were having a revolt. Come on! Zabuza took a couple steps closer as he roared at them. They all took a couple steps back. We can get him! Someone shouted in a shaky voice. Yeah, there's only one of him. There's a ton of us! Another man shouted, sounding a little more confident than the last. A dull roar erupted from about half the crowd. They slowly began to inch back closer. Stop it, you idiots! Gatta sounded as if he was in pain. At me! Look at me! All the thugs turned around and were completely blown away by what they saw. Lee had Gatta's arm twisted behind his back and held a kunai to his throat. No one move! Lee shouted, twisting Gatta's arm for added effect. And no! Gatta shouted. Stop! You'll break it. If I kill you right now, this whole thing ends. Lee said this to Gatta but shouted it so everyone else could hear. You're the only reason the bridge builder has to be killed. That's the only reason my team is caught in this conflict. Kill him and you won't make it out of here alive. Zabuza said as he slowly walked through the crowd. Everyone here, including me, needs this man for money. Zabuza stopped walking. He was directly in between the crowd of thugs and Lee now. Of course, Gata did just say he's through with me. The demon ninja let his threat hang in the air. Gata caught on fast. Haha, come on Zabuza, you know I was just playing with you. In fact, I was thinking of doubling, screw that, tripling your salary. Just please, get me out of this. That's more like it, Gatu. Zabuza practically purred. A wave of pure killing intent suddenly flooded the room. Those closest to Zabuza slipped to their knees immediately. Some even passed out. Gatu was among them. Lee didn't collapse, but his knees became wobbly and his grip loosened on Gatu enough to allow him to fall to the ground. A second later and Zabuza had Lee by the neck, slamming him to the ground. He put his mouth close to the boy's ear. Unfortunately for you, I'm going to have to make an example of you. Force your body limp and it won't hurt as bad. Lee had no other choice than to do what he said. The entire group was seated at Tazuna's kitchen table for dinner. No matter how many times it happened, Haku still couldn't get used to it. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, was currently setting all the food down while Naruto passed all the plates and glasses out to everyone. It's always nice to have so many guests in the house, Tsunami said as she finished setting down the food and took her seat. Haku took pleasure in the fact that Naruto looked just as out of place as he felt. Perhaps he wasn't used to this type of setting either. Inari. Tsunami called for her son to come join the table. Haku had only ever seen the boy once, and the experience had left a bad taste in his mouth. The kid had completely lost all hope. He did nothing other than cry all day and blame it on others. It seemed to hit a little too close to home for Haku to want to even think about it. Maybe it was because Haku felt like he was looking at his past self when he looked at him, but it actually made him want to strangle the kid. Again though, Haku was able to take comfort in the fact that Naruto seemed to share his sentiments. Just listening to Guy and Tazuna talk, Haku was able to infer that the two had been in a couple nasty arguments already. I don't want any, the boy shouted from the other room of the house. Haku sighed. This didn't sound good. Sounded like another conflict was about to erupt, and he was going to be around for this one. Inari, right this minute, his mother shouted. A few seconds later and the sound of heavy footsteps coming down the hall reached their ears. A moment later and Inari entered the room. I don't want to eat with these losers and that murderer, Inari roared. Haku's face fell slightly at being called a murderer. Watch who you're calling a loser, you crybaby, Naruto shouted at the boy. I'm not a crybaby, Inari screamed back. And I call you losers because there's no way you can ever beat Gatu. You try so hard, but what are you going to accomplish? You'll all just end up dead. You've already lost one teammate. That tears it. Naruto stood up so fast that the chair he was sitting in was toppled over. Naruto-kun. No! Hinata sat up too, but she wasn't fast enough. Naruto delivered a fist right into the side of Inari's head, sending the boy crashing to the ground. Naruto sat there breathing heavily for a few seconds over the wailing boy. I'm sorry. I'm going to go cook my own food. Naruto left the house in a hurry. Everyone else sat in complete silence. Inari's crying was the only thing that could be heard at the moment. I never want to see you guys again, Inari shouted as he too ran from the house. Inari. Tsunami called after her son but made no move to go after him. She couldn't bring herself to, instead she looked back at her food, small tears rolling down her face. I'm sorry, Guy said. But after what he said about my other student, I couldn't bring myself to stop Naruto. I'll personally scold him, and we will both swim 1,000 laps around the bay with 500-pound weights attached. Guy gave his usual challenge, but it lacked the fire it normally had. Perhaps the fatigue was finally starting to get to him. No, we're the ones that are sorry, Tazuna responded, his head bowed in shame. You're such good people, yet you are talked to in such a way. Once this bridge is complete though, he'll come around. He'll see what great people you are. Tazuna did his best to smile at him. At least let me go apologize to your son personally. Hitting a child is unforgivable after all. Guy began to stand up. Guy-sensei, I'll talk to him. You stay here. Hinata, who was still up, immediately went for the door. Yes, thank you, Hinata. Guy slid back down to his seat. Haku got up too and began to follow after Hinata. No one tried to stop him. Inari sat on the edge of the dock. His tears continued to fall from his face and hit the water beneath him. He was so lost in thought he didn't even hear Hinata come up to him. You mind if I sit here? Inari jumped at her soft voice. He looked up at Hinata and then looked away from her without saying a word. She took that as a yes and sat down. I know Naruto-kun can seem very harsh sometimes, but he always means well when he speaks. Typical, you would side with him. Inari interrupted her. He wiped his nose and continued to look away from her. Tazuna-san told us about your father. Naruto-kun grew up without ever knowing his dad, you know? Inari finally looked over at her in surprise. My own father looks at me with disgust whenever he sees me. Hinata whispered. She shook her head to get away from the thoughts. This wasn't about her. It was about them. It's kind of funny. You both say how you don't understand each other, yet when I look at you, I see Naruto-kun when he was younger. What do you mean? How can I be anything like that guy? So what if he never knew his dad? That just means he doesn't understand the pain of losing him. Tears began to slide from his face again. Naruto-kun may not have known what it was like to have a dad, but that doesn't mean his life wasn't hard. Our whole village hates him. Hates him for something I don't even understand. They were all so cruel to Naruto-kun. I used to watch him all the time, you know? He would train every day to become strong so he could be accepted. Yet he always failed. When he failed, he would cry. Not much different from you. Inari couldn't believe what he was hearing. Naruto used to cry? He stopped crying though. Inari barely managed to ask. One day he just quit. Hinata stared out over the water. Memories of Naruto flooded into her head. He quit crying, but he kept training all the time. He still didn't have anyone that accepted him, but he didn't cry. I think he realized that it wasn't going to help. He just simply gave up crying. And thanks to him, I learned to quit crying over my failures too. I used to be so miserable. Every time I messed up, I would lock myself in my room and cry. Now, thanks to Naruto-kun, I don't cry when I fail. I get back up and try again. No matter how hard it seems, I won't ever give up. I hope you'll try too, Inari-san. Inari just stared blankly at Hinata. She smiled at him and slowly sat up and then walked away. He looked back out over the water. No more tears came to his eyes. He had a lot more on his mind now. Did you hear everything? Hinata asked as she passed the corner of the house. Yeah. Haku, who had been leaning against the wall, followed after Hinata. You have a similar pain to us, don't you, Haku-san? Hinata asked as they walked into the forest. Yes. I used to cry a lot too. I cried until all my tears were gone though. When Zabuza-san found me, I was already dried up. He gave me meaning. I live only for him. Haku wondered who he was saying that for now. Soon, the sound of a raging battle reached their ears. They came to the clearing where the Naruto and Hinata trained endlessly every day. 4 Narutos were currently mixed up in an all-out brawl. They wailed on each other with all their strength. To both Haku and Hinata's amazement, not a single clone popped from the terrible punishment they were receiving. Naruto-san really is something else. Haku murmured as he watched the scene in front of himself. Hinata could only nod as she stared at him, a small blush on her face. Ah, I see. Haku mumbled after looking back and forth between the two. He doubted Hinata even heard him. Haku took this time to notice something else. The ground Naruto was fighting in was trashed. There were numerous marks that looked like someone had been spinning in. Next to nearly every one of these marks was a pile of barf. Just what kind of training were they going through? Haku couldn't help but wonder. Are you sure this is something I should be seeing? Haku asked as he began to step away. It doesn't matter. Hinata answered. She didn't move from her spot. Don't forget, Hinata-san. In just a few days we'll be enemies again. We'll be pitted against each other in a life and death battle. Haku turned his back to the two of them and began to walk away. You won't kill us, Hinata said too quietly for him to hear. I know it. It was day 12. It had been 5 days since the last incident, and yet Lee still ached all over. Zabuza didn't hold back one bit as he thrashed the young genin in every sense of the word. Yet none of that mattered. Not to Lee anyways. Despite the terrible beating Zabuza had given him, Lee had felt he earned something from the demon ninja. Perhaps it was his respect? Lee couldn't be sure. Zabuza-san! Look what I got! Lee walked up to a small fire that Zabuza had going and dumped a small dough down at the man's feet. The two of them were now en route to the bridge. In 2 days Lee would be able to see his teammates again. Too bad it wouldn't be a very joyous reunion. Not bad, kid. For not having any ninjutsu you are surprisingly adaptive. The shirtless shinobi immediately set to work at skinning the dough. It is not that surprising really, Lee said as he plopped down. I have to be after all. It is the only reason I am able to be a shinobi in the first place. Well, that and Guy-sensei. My guy, I can't wait to rip that man's head from his shoulders. Zabuza chuckled low to himself. I wish you would not speak in such a way. It is most unyouthful. Lee chided the older shinobi. Youth. That's all you freaking talk about. Zabuza whipped the skin of the dough to the side as he finished. You should tell me more about your youth, Zabuza-san. How did you become such a twisted man? Lee talked as blunt as possible. Do you want to die before we get there? I'm still pretty young, damn it. Zabuza snarled at Lee. The green-clad boy didn't respond. Instead he stared at Zabuza with wide eyes. Fine, you want to know something about my past? Lee nodded enthusiastically. To pass the academy in my village, you had to kill a classmate in a one-on-one fight. All of Lee's enthusiasm died right there. So you know what I did? Lee didn't respond. I wiped out my entire class. Since then, they abolished that custom. It was when they heard of this exploit that I was recruited to be trained with one of the 7 swordsmen. Lee narrowed his eyes suspiciously. I see, so secretly, you're actually a pacifist. Did you listen to a word I said? Zabuza shouted at the genin. I killed my entire class. How does that make me a pacifist? Yes, but because of you, that custom was removed, right? Lee waved his finger in the air. So by killing you class, you saved half of the lives that are currently employed in Kirigakure today. And you call me twisted? What kind of logic is that? Zabuza was completely shocked by the boy's optimism. That is the logic of youth. Lee took a dramatic pose as he shouted to the sky. Sit down, you freak. Lee immediately did as he was told, but a big smile lingered on his face. What are you smiling at? It was starting to weird Zabuza out. I knew you were not all bad. I mean, you traveled with that kid, Haku. No one who has kid with them can be bad. Lee continued to smile brightly at Zabuza. Zabuza threw his hands in the air in defeat. Think whatever you want. I still intend to take the bridge builder's life tomorrow. Not to mention your sensei's. Gato will pay big once this works out. Lee stared quietly at Zabuza for a few seconds. How did you end up in Gata's gang? I mean, why did you leave Kiri? It's a long story, kid, and not one I like to tell, so I'll give you the short version. Zabuza scratched his head as he thought where to start. I attempted to take over the village and failed. I've been on the run ever since. I met Gata by chance, and it seemed to fit. If I can get this money, I can afford to go back and try again. This time I'll hire another village. Maybe Kumo or something. Zabuza grabbed a jug of water and started to drink. Instead of that, just team up with us and come to Konoha. Zabuza immediately spit his water out. Don't say just ridiculous things. There's no way that's possible. Zabuza shouted. Sure it is, Hokage-sama is really understanding. I'm sure if you explain the situation he'll be more than happy to help. Lee continued to smile at the demon ninja. You know what? I've lost my appetite. Zabuza doused out the fire and the darkness of the night took over. Hey, wait, I'm still hungry though. Lee shouted. Too bad, go to sleep, brat. Zabuza laid down and rolled away so his back was to the genin. You You can protest all you want, but I know you're a good guy, deep down there. Despite being energetic just a second ago, Li Nao sounded sleepy. Zabuza said nothing to Li Nao. Instead, he let silence claim the area for the rest of the night. Here's the plan. Guy spoke with complete authority now as he looked over his two students. The two of you are to stay here for 15 minutes. Once that time is up, charge no matter what. Li's life is on the line. Yes. Hinata and Naruto shouted together. Alright. Tazuna-san, you ready? Guy turned to the old bridge builder who nodded at him. No matter what happens. I just want you all to know that I think I made the right choice in hiring you guys. Thank you for everything. Tazuna bowed to them. Don't speak like it's over yet. You'll definitely complete that bridge. Naruto attempted to cheer the old man up. Well, let's go. Guy began to walk away. I guess I'll see you two on the battlefield. Haku muttered as he waved to the two genin. He then hurried after Guy and Tazuna. This wasn't good, he realized. He was going to have to crush these feelings here in a few short minutes. In no time the small group arrived at the bridge to find it completely shrouded in a thick mist. Guess he's already here. Guy mumbled. He looked to Tazuna. I'm ready. Let's go save your student. Guy nodded and the three of them walked into the mist. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.